Hello, everyone. Welcome to Podcasting with Online Tools. My name is Patrick. I am one of the studio services specialists at Studio 300 in Fountaindale Public Library. Today, I'm going to be going over some online tools that you can use for recording your podcasts, as well as sharing those with others. Whether you're just starting out podcasting or you've been podcasting for a while and you're looking to learn some new tools that might help you socially distance and interview other people, we're going to kind of touch a little bit on several different programs today. Just a reminder, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A, which should be at the bottom of your screen. Jeffrey will let me know that there's a question. And then your mics will be disabled during the presentation. So make sure any questions you submit there and I will get to them as quickly as possible. Just kind of an overview of what I'm going to go over today, as well as one thing I'm not going to go over. I'm going to kind of briefly talk about the state of podcasting, how it's changed over the last 10 years or so. And why it's kind of catching on, as well as I'm going to spend a considerable amount of time giving an overview of an online program called Zencaster, which is an online recording tool that allows you to record interviews with several guests from multiple different computers at once, go over some of its pros and cons, and then also kind of give you a demo of the actual program. Kind of some of the things that come up while you're actually recording and to keep in mind, as well as just some general audio recording techniques when you are doing interviews, whether you're doing interviews in the same room or you're interviewing somebody on another computer, just some basic audio etiquette that you want to keep in mind, no matter what program you're using. Then I'm going to talk a bit about some of the ways to share your podcast. I'm not going to go into extreme detail on any one platform, podcast hosting platform. Each one offers different things and has different rates for what they do. But I'm going to kind of give you a basic background on what to kind of look for when you're looking at your options for how you want to share your podcast. The one thing I'm not going to talk about is monetization and how to make money. I'm not a professional podcaster. I don't do it for a living or anything. I wouldn't really know where to begin to tell you, what's the best option. Should you put it on YouTube? Should you leave it off YouTube? That's something that people will have to research on their own. And ultimately it's up to you to decide what it is you want your podcast to do, whether you want to just share it with people or you want to try to monetize it and stuff. So we're not going to go into monetization. Today is primarily the technical side of things, how to record, how to use some tools, and then how to approach how you want to share your podcast. Podcasts have actually been around for over 2 decades, kind of right at the beginning of the 2000s, with the breakthrough in technology like iTunes, the availability of digital audio recordings and interviews versus, say, what you would get from a radio station began around that time, and obviously has kind of taken off, especially in the last 5 years. Prosumer technology, such as USB microphones, smartphone apps, as well as just cheaper, affordable audio recording devices that you can carry with you, have allowed for both do-it-yourself podcasters as well as hobbyists to take up the art of podcasting, as well as professionals. Interest-based media, podcasts are kind of, people find their niche podcasts that they want to listen to. You're finding like-minded people either presenting or listening to the podcast. So it's a wonderful way of connecting listeners and podcasters with those people who have, opinions similar to theirs, but also allows, laypersons to have better access to experts on various subjects. And podcasts, they really span all genres and topics. There's human interest stories, humor and stand-up comedy podcasts, professional development, spiritual and cultural wisdom-based podcasts, podcasts to start discussing art, films, how to record films, and lifestyles. They really run the gamut. So if you have an idea, go ahead and record it, you know, whether there's one out there like it already or not. If it interests you, it will probably interest somebody else. So give it a go. As I mentioned, the primary program I'm going to talk today is called Zencaster. It's a web-based program. There is no download required for this program. It is an online recording tool that records remote interviews with the ability to save separate audio tracks. So one person's on one computer while you're hosting it from your own computer. Each of those tracks is recorded separately, so you're not getting the noise out of the speakers picked up on both of them. Each one's separate. And then afterwards, you can either mix it yourself or you can pay online for the post mix. I'm going to go to the Zencaster site and just show you kind of a basic intro video here.
If you're a podcaster, you likely already know this story. You've got remote guests, but getting high-quality recordings of them is proving difficult. You know, poor audio can distract or even annoy your listeners, causing them to drop off early. Many may never return. Recording over Skype or Hangouts can result in distortion, robotic voices, or even complete dropouts. Coaching your guests on how to record themselves on their end is too complicated and time-consuming. When you have a high-profile guest on your show, it needs to be as effortless for them as possible. So, what's the solution? Enter Zencaster. Zencaster allows you to painlessly record your guests in studio quality with a double-ended recording just by sending them a link. How does it work? 1. Create an episode and send the invite link to your guests. 2. Simply press record once everyone has joined to begin. Each participant's audio will be recorded locally in studio quality and streamed to your cloud drive. 3. Once the recording is finished, a separate studio quality track per guest will be automatically available in your cloud drive along with a leveled and enhanced mix track ready for publishing. Zencaster requires no installation for you or your guests, and the audio is available immediately for editing. All that's needed is a computer, microphone, and a modern browser. It's dead simple to use, and your podcast will be crystal clear. You will be confidently publishing studio quality shows, and your listeners will love it. Would you like to hear the difference? Record your first episode today for free.
All right, so that's just a brief overview of what you can do with Zencaster. First thing I'm going to talk about with regards to it is there are two plans. So there is a paid plan for Zencaster. There is also a free plan. The paid plan is $20 a month, and it's $18 a month if you pay for a year. That gives you access to unlimited guests, unlimited recordings, as you can see. It gives you a live editor that you can use on the actual website. You don't have to take the files and go into a separate audio editing workstation. It gives you high quality MP3 as well as lossless WAV files, which are even higher quality. And it gives you 10 hours of free post-production per month, which is how you get those separate tracks mixed. So if you don't want to spend time mixing yourself, then you are going to have to use that post-production feature, which you're either going to get free, some free hours with the professional plan, or you can just sign up for the free plan, which normally there's a limit of 2 other guests, so 2 separate computers connecting as well as yours, and then a limit of recording 8 hours per month. You still get the MP3, and the post-production you have to pay as you're using it. But as you can see, 2 of those lines, the limit of 2 guests and the record 8 hours or record 8 hours per month, is crossed out right now. And then if you look at this little pink sticker right there, it's actually, they've gotten rid of those for the duration of the coronavirus outbreak. I don't know how long that is going to be, or how long they're going to, waive those 2 restrictions. I do know they are based in the United States, so that will kind of give you an idea. It could be a while, but for now, they are allowing you to have as many guests on the show as you want when you're recording, and there's no limit to the number of hours you can record in a month. When you're getting started with Zencastr, you're going to create or log into your Zencaster account. And then once you've logged in, you're going to be looking at your dashboard. And I'm going to do this for you in a minute after I go through this slide. You can either select an existing episode that you've already started recording on a previous occasion, or you can click to create a new episode. The Zencaster and the browser, once you go into that episode, will ask for access to your microphone. You can use a built-in microphone, but it is recommended that you use some sort of external mic. It could be a USB microphone, could be the little microphone that's on certain earbuds. But typically, if you want to enhance the quality of the recording, some sort of microphone other than the microphone that's just on the computer is recommended. It's also recommended that you wear headphones whenever you're doing recording an interview instead of listening to the other person out of the computer speakers. This helps avoid audio feedback and voice echoes. If you don't have a USB microphone or headphones, we actually have those available at Studio 300 for checkout. We have one USB microphone that you can check out and take home for 5 days at a time. We also have 2 other USB microphones that you can actually use in the studio if you want to record your podcast while you're at the studio. We also have headphones available for you to check out as well. If you don't know how to check out equipment from the studio, you just have to attend our orientation, which we now have available online. It's a virtual orientation. You'll watch several videos and then you'll take a short quiz, and then you're able to check out equipment, up to 7 items of equipment for 5 days at a time. And a couple more things about Zencaster, then I'm going to do the live demo with Jeff. It does not support mobile or tablet-based operating systems. It is strictly on laptops and desktops right now. As I mentioned earlier, the post-production credits are required to get a mixed podcast within the program. You do have the option of taking the separate tracks that you record and bringing them onto your own computer using a program like Audacity or GarageBand or Pro Tools or Logic, and doing the mix in that program. But if you want just the mix within the program, you are going to have to pay a little bit for those production credits, or do the pro plan and get a few 10 hours free. There is a video option coming. It's currently in a private beta, and you can sign up for that on the website if you also want to record video in addition to the audio. There are some benefits and drawbacks to doing video recordings for podcasts. The obvious benefit is that you get to see the person, you get to react to their body language. People tend to get a little more animated and involved when they can see the other person and read them and bounce off of their own interest and animation. One of the big drawbacks with video is for people with who don't have fast speed internet. As they mentioned in that video that we watched, you can get signal drops, your audio can sound kind of weird, or it could just completely crash the program. And then you've recorded, your recording is either stops abruptly or is lost. But more and more people are actually doing video-based podcasts. Spotify actually just launched their video podcast collection today. Kind of ironic timing, but more and more podcast directories are incorporating some sort of video element to it. So I'm gonna exit out of here and go to the Zencaster that I already pulled up, which is right here. So I've already got an episode started here. Basically, when I came into the episode, it asked me if I wanted to do if I wanted to use my microphone. I said yes, and it gives me this health check on the tracks to show me what's working, what's a concern. So it's telling me the audio is good, the tracks are good, but my warning is that I don't have much storage available. So I want to be careful about how much I record, or possibly hook up like an external hard drive instead, or connect to my Google Drive account. I've already invited Jeffrey, so we should see if we can hear him.
Hello, how are y'all today?
Hello, Jeffrey. All right. And we've got your health check as well. There is a chat box here at the bottom if you need to chat without actually speaking. It's right here. Chat. Here, yes. So then you have these microphone buttons on each track, and each person, you can label them whatever you want. Obviously, you can see my name and Jeffrey's name. We each have a microphone if I needed to mute my mic. And then if you kind of are playing a host and you want people to not just talk over each other, there is this raise hand feature where they can raise their hand, and then you can be like, yes, go ahead, Jeffrey, say something.
Hello.
Hello. All right. You can also add footnotes if you want to take a note about topics that you're talking about once you start recording. So I would just hit record. And so now you're going to see these waveforms show up as I talk. So this is basically a timeline of what we're recording. These are the waves that show the volume of my voice. If Jeffrey starts talking here in a moment.
Yes, so then you would see my waveform be on screen. And I think it's important to note that we are in different places. Patrick is in Studio 300 and I'm elsewhere in Bolingbrook. I'm actually using a Chromebook, which is probably one of the reasons why we got the warning in terms of space, because the Chromebook does not have a lot of space. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend using the Chromebook for really long recordings because it does record locally. But I think it's pretty fine for this. And I'm just using the built-in mic on the Chromebook. So a really straightforward, simple way to be the guest on Patrick's podcast.
Yes. It's also a good idea to do kind of a test mock-up, especially if you're doing this with somebody the first time. You can always delete the tracks or start a new episode. Like we kind of noticed that when Jeffrey had his mic unmuted, there's some sort of popping noise on his mic. So we might try to solve that by actually giving him an external mic instead of the mic on his Chromebook. But if it's something where if you hear it now, it's probably going to be there on the recording as well. So you want to try to troubleshoot those beforehand instead of when you're actually doing the recording. I'm going to do a test footnote here. End of speech. And now there will be a footnote on the timeline when I stop recording. And we'll do one more. End of recording. And I'm going to stop.
That's handy for future editing, having those little notes.
Yes. So those show up right here as just quick things. Again, that's for more if whether you're editing, like Jeffrey mentioned, within the program on the Pro plan, or if you're taking it into another thing, just having those notes for maybe part of the podcast you absolutely want to have and you don't want to edit out, or maybe it's where somebody lost their train of thought and you had to pause for a minute and regroup. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I get this note. All of my tracks have finished uploading and it is now safe to close this tab. I'm going to close that. The big thing is I need to download these tracks. If you're doing a long, if you record a half hour or an hour long podcast, you want to make sure the other person doesn't turn off their computer or log out of their browser until you've gotten that notification, so that you can actually download what they said. So here are my solo tracks. I have mine right here, and then Jeffrey's. So I'm going to go ahead and click download. I'm just going to save them to my desktop. I only have option for the MP3 because I'm on the basic free plan. And I'm going to go ahead and download Jeffrey's. And these are just your standard MP3 audio files, which you can then take into any kind of digital audio workstation. You can also see I have this option for automatic post-production. So if I didn't want to do the mix and I wanted it to just do it for me, I can tell it I want to include this track and this track. And then in this case, I don't have the credits available, so I would have to buy the credits. So you can see the prices here. You know, once you go over 10 hours, it's basically already telling you, you know, it would be more worth it to do the pro plan. But if you're doing just like one a month or something, maybe the pro plan isn't worth it. Or if you're comfortable doing the editing yourself, or you want to learn how to edit, again, you can start using Studio 300. We have people here who can kind of show you how to use the programs to do that, so that you don't have to sign up for a paid plan. It's not too tedious, but there is a bit of a learning curve to some of the audio editing. But if you've ever done video editing, digital video editing, it's very similar to that. You can see there is a link up here at the top for joining the video beta, which will sign you up for that. I'm actually going to hang up my call with Jeffrey now, and I'm going to go back to the dashboard just to show you the dashboard. So I'm going to hang up that call. I have the option of restarting it if I realized that there was something we didn't talk about. I'm going to go to the dashboard here to show notifications. I don't want them to see. So if I had post-production credits, they would show up right over here. I also have the option of adding it. If I wanted more storage, because I knew I was going to do a longer podcast, I can connect my Dropbox or my Google Drive account to Zencaster. And now when I do my recording, it would actually save the files to my Google Drive versus the computer hard drive. I can access the previous episodes I've done, my Zencaster test and my test with Jeff. I also have the option of archiving them. When I do that though, it will permanently remove them. So I need to make sure that before I do that, I have saved the files, the audio files somewhere else, or I've decided I don't need those audio files. I can also create a new episode. You get to name it and it's going to let you know, again, based on your plan, do you have the option of recording WAV? In this case, no. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that. That is the basics of Zencaster. It's really nice in terms of the fact that you don't have to download anything software-wise. Neither does the person you're interviewing or persons you're interviewing. It's all web-based. You do have to use Chrome or Firefox. It does not support Safari. But for recording multiple people at once in different spaces, it does a really nice job. And the ability to record each track separately really helps with keeping the final podcast mix very clean. That's one of the tricks, is to be able to have that control after the recording. There are a couple other online options that are free for recording, at least for the next month or so. The one is free, and those two are Zoom meetings and Google Meet. Zoom does require a download. Both the host as well as the people being recorded need to download the Zoom app. It's free, but there is a download required, so make sure they do that beforehand. You have the option of recording video and or audio for the meetings. And then you also have the ability to record the audio tracks separate. Again, that's a very desirable option if you're going to be editing the podcast after the fact. It really gives you better control over who you're hearing when, and can help just give it that more refined, polished sound. There is limited local storage without the paid plan for Zoom. So If you're, again, looking to do longer podcasts, you either need to have lots of space or, just do shorter podcasts. For Google Meet, there is the ability to record the Google Meet video right now. It is free through September 30th. After that, it will become just part of the G Suite package for Google Meet, which is, or for Google, I should say. They have plans that range from $6 to $25 a month. However, the Google Meet recording currently is the video file only. It does not separate your audio. So if you're hoping to just do audio-based podcasts, there would be an extra step in that you would have to extract that audio from the video file in another program. When you do record these Google Meets, it does save directly to your Google Drive. So if you have Google Meet, you have Google Drive most likely. And if you do one of the G Suite plans, I think the base G Suite plan gives you 30 gigabytes of space on Google. So you typically won't run out unless you're doing, hundreds of hours of recording. But those are a couple of the other options. Again, a lot of what I said with regards to things to keep in mind with audio apply to these as well. If possible, have an external microphone plugged into the computer. Also, ideally, wear headphones if you're interviewing other people, so that, again, you don't hear the feedback or the echo from your speakers going back into the microphone. Once you've gotten your podcast edited and you've got your podcast mixed and you're ready to share it, there's a couple different ways you can go about sharing it. If you're looking to do mass distribution, you're going to want to look up something called a podcast hosting platform. Another term was aggregators, which came more from the music industry with music distribution. Digital music distribution. But basically what these hosting platforms do is they are going to store and distribute your podcast. So they are going to take the copy of your podcast that you give them. They're going to store it somewhere on a server that is able to distribute it to multiple podcast directories, and so that tens, dozens, hundreds of people can access that podcast at once versus trying to run it, off your own private server, or having to share that file over and over and over again if you were doing it from your personal collection. So these platforms, they'll take your file and then they create an RSS feed, which allows for multiple people to access that podcast at once and listen to it without delays or interruptions. Because they are storing your file and they're doing all this other stuff to make sure it's accessible on multiple directories and without any kind of delay, it's going to cost money. They have all kinds of plans. Usually most of these platforms like Podbean, Buzzsprout, Anchor, they're going to have base plans. They're going to have higher price plans. What you are typically getting with those plans, with the extra money, is more recording or longer recordings and longer podcasts. Sometimes they will take your podcast down after several months. So if you buy the premium plan, they won't take your podcast down. But basically they're going to, again, take your file and then they make it available. All you have to do is give them the file, as well as like the image that you want to accompany that, and possibly a bio of what your podcast is about. If that sounds too complicated, you have the option of just putting your podcast on YouTube if you have a YouTube or Google account. But if you're looking for that wider distribution, like on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, those are the three big ones: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Then looking for a hosting platform is probably the way to go. As I mentioned, though, you don't have to do that. You can also share your files just with your friends and family. You can do that via Dropbox or Google Drive. If you're doing a long podcast or if you're doing a video podcast, the file will probably be too big for an email. But if it's just like a shorter podcast MP3, you might be able to send that over email if it's audio only. Or you can also share your podcast on the Fountaindale Community Content Collection. So Fountaindale has this local collection available online. We have local authors, musicians, and musical artists, as well as podcasters available on the website. And I'll show you how to get there from the main portal. So you go to fountaindale.org, you go to this Books and More tab and click on the local collection. If you want to submit, you'll click on Community Content Collection right here, and it will bring you up to the basically the files that we accept and all of those, where it will be displayed, as well as kind of the terms of agreement for when you're posting your items digitally on the collection. If you want to see what else is available, you can click the C right beneath that. It'll take a moment to load, and then you can see we've got the Blended Familia Saves the World podcast. We've got some Studio 300 podcasts with people who use the studio, interviewed by the staff, as well as some other videos and local content here. So if you want to just have a place to share it other than your email, but you don't want to do the podcast hosting platforms, this is an alternative for all of our Fountaindale residents to share your podcast. We're happy to put it on here and share it with other people and see what kind of podcasts you make. So that's pretty much it for the presentation. Don't be scared if everything doesn't go right the first time with the audio or with the recording. Maybe you don't have an external microphone yet. Again, those are recommendations, but in no way should they stop you from trying to get started. The first one is always going to be a little rougher typically, but it's the quality of the content over the sound. So if you think you've got an idea that you want to share, I'm sure there are some people out there who would like to hear it. So go ahead, whether it's on Zencaster or Google Meet or Zoom or another one of the online recording programs, or if you want to come into the studio and record somebody with the studio equipment, definitely dive in and get started and see what you can make. I'll take any questions. I'll stay on for questions for a little bit, whether it's about Zencaster or any of the other software or platforms I talked about, or if you want to know more about Studio 300, I'll stick around and take any questions at this time.
We're waiting for questions. Patrick, Jeffrey here again, this time through Zoom, not through the Zencaster. Another possible hosting thing is to use SoundCloud, and that's another possibility. And then what you record, or rather what you post into SoundCloud, can be embedded in other places. So I think sometimes with podcasting, if you already have a blog, podcasting is a nice complement to that. So I mean, if you're writing and you're making that part of your blog, but you could also add podcasting, a YouTube link as well as something like SoundCloud can be embedded into your blog, and it can be just another way to get your information out there.
Yeah, absolutely. SoundCloud is great for like you mentioned, the audio embedding. Many people, especially in the indie music and indie podcast stuff, again, as an alternative to trying to, get your podcast on all of the different platforms and stuff. If you're just trying to find that place where people can access it, and then you just share it on your main webpage or blog, SoundCloud is a great way to do that, as well as YouTube.
Any other questions? Heather said that it was a great presentation. Thank you, Heather.
Oh, thank you very much.
All Patrick on that one. I'm just pressing buttons. That's all I'm doing. Did you want to maybe mention, even though it's not strictly podcasting, but maybe did you want to take a moment to mention the StoryCorps project, perhaps? Okay.
Yeah. So very recently, the library has been looking to start a StoryCorps-based project. So StoryCorps was an organization that was started in the early 2000s by Dave Isay about collecting stories of Americans through, one-on-one interviews. Typically, it would be a family member or a friend interviewing one of their relatives or another dear friend. Basically, over the years, they've amassed a huge collection of recordings, and they give prompts, question prompts that you can get on the website. And I can go there really quick to storycorps.org. But Fountaindale has started its own community collection of stories of people in the community interviewing their friends and family. And basically, these recordings are typically about 45-minute long interviews or conversations. Some of them, bits and snippets of them have been shared on Morning Edition. So if you listen to NPR Morning Edition, you've probably heard some of those podcasts or recordings. They've actually very recently, for the most part, they were doing these interviews in person or in recording booths. They have very recently started the StoryCorps Connect, which allows you to record these interviews remotely as well. And the really cool thing about the StoryCorps project is that when you submit these interviews to StoryCorps to be stored on their site, they're actually also entered into the National Archives in the Library of Congress, and they are going to be stored there indefinitely as a kind of oral history of America. So Fountaindale recently launched their community page, and we're inviting people to, again, either use the StoryCorps Connect application online, or to come into the studio and record a family member, a loved one, dear friend or acquaintance whose life story interests you and you want to learn more about. And again, they have the prompts available online. So if you go to participate, you can look for, so here's StoryCorps Connect, which will go through how to use StoryCorps Connect to do the online one. And then there will also be great questions. So they have all these different questions depending on who you're interviewing that you can use as prompts, but you don't have to stick to them. And oftentimes the best interviews are ones that get very conversational and are, less about, just reading off the script and stuff. So parents, questions for grandparents, questions about the pandemic, what's going on with people, and just great questions for anyone. So that's a project that's ongoing with the library. We're going to have a couple other virtual programs and coming up based on that. The main one will probably be around Thanksgiving. They do a big project called the Great Thanksgiving Listen, where people are invited to interview their loved ones, their relatives around the holidays when they're spending time with them. But that's StoryCorps, and I'll leave it there. Again, any questions about the studio or recording podcasts? I'm happy to take right now.
Thank you, Patrick, for the brief overview of StoryCorps. Not totally podcast related, but sort of. Just I was thinking of a little.
Yeah, I mean, again with the audio recording and interviews. I mean, I think a lot of the goals of StoryCorps have taken inspiration and at the same time inspired kind of the podcast movement, and are absolutely embracing some of the podcast technology to continue to record more and more stories.
And Heather, we're also happy that you jumped online this evening. She was very helpful and thought everything was meaningful. That's terrific. That's
awesome.
Good to hear.
Thank you again.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, without any other further questions, that'll wrap it up for tonight.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff, for helping with the demo.
Always. Take care, everyone. Good night.